All right, welcome everybody. We got a full house here tonight, so we'll call the Committee of the Whole of September 13, 2021 to order. The clerk will call the roll, please.
Brereton.
Here.
Fleury.
Present.
Frank.
Here.
Freeman.
Here.
McGee.
Here.
Mulhall.
Here.
Porter.
Here.
Prather.
Here.
Snow.
Here.
Stevens.
Here.
10 present.
Thank you. We do not have any public comment.
No.
Under public forum, I had laid an informational on everybody's desk here tonight. There's no action on it here tonight. I did invite Mike Dunn Jr., who you've already met. I'd invite him to come here this evening, and he's with us tonight. And essentially, I wanted him to talk to the council and explain to them about the Northern Illinois Council of Government that you have here, an informational, and essentially what that says or what that organization does. It involves the different municipalities or villages around the area, and it allows us to have a voice, a stronger voice on funding, on grants, and what have you. But I did want to introduce Mike, if he would come up, please, and go over it, and any questions that you may have, feel free to ask. I'm not asking for action on this tonight, so I don't want anybody to feel rushed or that we have any vested interest other than making sure that we understand this issue. So thank you. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, happy to be here. Always nice to visit with all of you. Thank you for having me. I come often to brief the city council with a lot of acronyms and a lot of organizations, and it typically probably comes across as like a Rube Goldberg device. And I'm going to follow in that tradition tonight and introduce one more organization, but it's very it's 20 years in the making. Mayor Brereton was supporting it way before I was hired. Chairman Wahlberg was supporting it. It was something that I was hired to do, and I only have been able, the pandemic slowed it down like everything else, I've only been able to start getting the pieces of it together in the last 6-7 months. And that's what's called the Council of Government. It is not a new entity. It is embedded into the Regional Planning Council. It does not take on, additional autonomy or anything like that, but it is a program function that allows all the government leaders that are elected with the support of their councils and boards to come together and speak to Springfield or Washington, D.C. That is something as a regional planning council, without that separate bifurcated program, that's something as a regional planning council we cannot do, because the regional planning council is typically year to year 81% federally funded. And so we had to create a 501 that is embedded into the planning council to have that separation of taxpayers' dollar to make that advocacy. Out of the gate, we were a participant, not a leader, but a participant in the advocacy for the Byron Nuclear Generation Facility. The governor had made a comment that people in Ogle County don't vote for him, and a lot of leaders locally were offended by that. And Mayor McNamara of Rockford was offended by that as a Democrat and asked to be the chairman of the COG. And he wrote and gave a lot of support to the fact that a closure of Byron affected Rockford as much as it affected anyone else. And it affected Northern Illinois. It affected all of us as people that are trying to, pay for clean energy. And so that was kind of the project out of the gate. Coming right after that is some of the discussion we've been brought in on the health and longevity of Stellantis. And so we drafted this letter, which is now for all of your review. And again, the power of that is to show leaders in Springfield when it comes to putting incentives together and to try to get our industry to stay here and grow here and to modernize and innovate here and using our workforce, that this is not just a Belvedere issue. That there are a number of leaders in Ogle County, in Stevenson County, in Winnebago County that all feel that Stellantis leaving would be equivalent to a Chernobyl disaster, and so economically speaking. And so I'm here to answer any questions you might have. It's the same staff of the Planning Council. It's the same board with the same elected leaders of the Planning Council, but it is a program that allows us to get out of our comfort zone, just focusing on planning and infrastructure and on those large projects that bind us all together as a region, to be able to speak with one voice to the state capital often, and sometimes to our national capital. We've asked both Chairman Johnson and Mayor Morris to participate as equal members. So while Mayor McNamara is the inaugural chairman, and he was elected by his peers of elected leaders, every person that sits at the table has an equal vote and an equal say. It is not balanced based on population or whether you're a county or a city. And so, Mayor, if there's something else you wanted me to touch on, I'm happy to, but.
Well, I did want them to see the letter that was formulated and put together regarding Stellantis, because I do believe that Stellantis is not just a Belvedere per se issue. Obviously, it's a regional employer, and actually statewide, they go into Wisconsin as well. And so anything that we could do to have a stronger voice to represent Stellantis, I think is very, very important. And I believe that when we speak as one voice, unfortunately, then we're heard, but unfortunately, as Mr. Dunn had mentioned, Ogle County regarding Byron really wasn't given a lot of credence by the governor until he realized, I think, that how it would affect the region, how it would affect everybody regionally. So with that being said, the only other thing that I wanted the council to be aware, because I don't want, what I do not want is I don't want any transparency with this. I personally believe that this is an excellent way to be able to represent the region, and Belvedere is a part of the region. I think with Exelon, I think that it was not realistic that if they close the nuclear plants, I don't think that was good for our economic health here. I think that would have been a catastrophe. It's obvious that nuclear power is clean power, and it doesn't really get any cleaner. But at least for mass generation. There's no way that you're going to have windmills and you're going to have solar panels that are going to be able to provide economic growth if we, in fact, hope to have any industry or new business in this community. You have to have sustainable, dependable energy. And I thought this letter actually was excellent. Mayor McNamara, I believe, carries a lot of clout in this region, and I was more than happy to see him step up and take the chairmanship. But there is an investment that the council would have to make in this, and it would be $5,000, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
For our joiner fee?
Yes, sir. So because we're not using federal money, the goal is to have a budget with all members contributing of anywhere from $60,000 to $70,000 a year. And so we're asking cities above 10,000 people, because villages are welcome to come and be equal. So any village can be a participant. And so a municipality above 10,000 people, I believe, would be asked to contribute towards that budget goal of $5,000 a year. And with that, it's not just letters. There was a team of individuals who were being paid that crafted this language. So what you're getting a lot of intelligent people putting together these policy pieces or these policy briefs to make the best case possible.
And I think what else you're getting with it is you're getting a regional approach to one of our largest employers in the region, not only Belvedere but the region. So the reason I had asked Mike to come here was to answer any questions that you may have before before I decided that I would join this. I think the council needs to be aware of it, and I think this is a team effort, and I certainly would love to have the support. $5,000 is the investment, but I do believe it will pay off. I had as well crafted a letter to the governor regarding Stellantis, but I thought it was actually much more important to hear from the region, not only from the city of Belvedere. I'm more than happy to do that, but I think when we look at it from a regional approach, it makes sense. And I think we do have a stronger voice, definitely. But it is up to the council. If the council wants to partake in that, I do not have a vote. I would hope that we would. I think we have a lot to gain. And I'm not going to have a vote here tonight. I wanted to have Mike come and answer any questions, and I wanted him to introduce this and to the council. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask him, but that is the nuts and bolts of it. And but I'd be more than happy to have you ask him anything that you like. And when we put this on the next committee meeting, it'll be there because you may have not think of something tonight, but you may think of something between now and a couple weeks. But feel free if you have any questions regarding what the $5,000 investment is and what it buys us.
Mayor, may I add one thing?
Absolutely.
Thank you. We are planning on sending this letter out Wednesday morning. So your decision on membership is not connected to this letter at all. We are passionate about the modernization of Stellantis and the expansion of Stellantis being, with the Rockford Airport being the two biggest economic anchors for the region. And so we want to advocate for this regardless. Two, as we gear up for the spring session, as they head into an election year and remapping, we feel that there will be a lot of bills being filed this spring, and we're trying to get our house in order now to prepare for that. The goal isn't to have a lobbyist. The goal isn't to be down there, filing a bunch of stuff. The goal is to see what sort of bills the suburbs are putting forward, Lake County, Will County, DuPage County, and seeing which are harmonious or might possibly benefit us. But typically when those bills come in, they're very defined on geography or population thresholds, and they often cut Winnebago and Boone County out of the picture. And so a lot of that funding will go towards staff on a policy level, working with the other counties. They have much more muscle than we do to see if they would carve out room for a Boone Winnebago County grouping in whatever they're doing. And so it's more of having situational awareness in Springfield on what's being filed, what's being active, and how can we participate if we choose to.
Thank you, Mike. Alderman Snow.
So I see on the list, you got Boone County, Belvedere, yada, yada. So, and like you have Rockford Park District. So things that jumped out at me, so our park district's not listed on there. I can't imagine that they don't fall within, having a significant say as well. But, so this list of villages and municipalities and organizations could grow as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Any taxing district would be welcome at the table. And we have been speaking to District 100.
And if I might comment on that, Alderman Snow, as well, the Park District does not have a superintendent right now. It's my understanding they're in limbo regarding that. So I think as they fill that position, maybe that'll become clearer as to the direction they decide to take. So, okay.
And their cost would not be $5,000, it would be less.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions? Alderwoman Frank.
So you said it's for a year. So when would that year start? Would we be prorated if we started?
So we're looking for a funding commitment on our fiscal year, July 1 to June 30th. That is our fiscal year. Thanks.
Alderwoman Moha.
So Chairman Johnson and Kevin Catlin came to the first meeting. They have expressed solid support. I'm not sure where they are in working with their board. I'm available to meet with any of these. I'm going to the Village of Winnebago tonight because they're also joining, and they're not on the letterhead yet. And so I'm giving the same Q&A to them tonight. But I do know, yeah, thank you.
Alderwoman Freeman, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So I believe strongly in their strength in numbers. So I would like to see, I know that Freeport has a big stake in Stellantis employment, and I'd like to see Byron, DeKalb, the more, the merrier, especially when it comes to political pressure. So I'm hoping that you guys can get a lot more communities involved.
Thank you, Alderwoman. So Freeport sits on the Regional Planning Council, as does Belvedere. They're going through some staff changes right now, so I've been holding off a little bit on the Council of Government piece, but they've been a great partner. We wrote a very successful FEMA grant for all their flooding with the river, and so we were able to secure a very large FEMA grant for them. They're part of the land bank as Belvedere is. They've been a great member, and so I've just tried to give them time in some of their staff reorganization. Byron, I met with the mayor because of Exelon, and he's very interested in joining the COG. Rochelle is very interested in joining the COG. So those are the ones that are kind of top of the list right now. You're welcome.
Anybody else have any questions for Mr. Dunn while he's here? And if you don't, you can certainly formulate them and call me or send them to me. And if I don't know the answer, I'll certainly get it for you. I think what intrigues me about this, or what excites me about this, is that you know, it's a way to advocate as not just one village, not just one city. It's a way to advocate for the region, and I think it would be a wise move. But I will put this on the agenda then for 2 weeks, and we'll readdress it. And in the meantime, any questions, feel free to give me a call or email me. Okay?
Thank you for having me, and I'm always willing to come back.
Thank you,
So,
Mr. Dunn. I
have a great night.
appreciate it. Thank you. All right, under reports of officers, boards, and special committees, item number 1, Public Works Unfinished Business, Stormwater Utility Implementation Phasing, which was tabled August 9th. In our packet, we had seen some more information from Mr. Anderson regarding that, and I guess first I'd like to entertain a motion to take this off of the table, if I could. Motion by Alderman Snow, second by Alderwoman Prather. Any discussion regarding that? Alderwoman Freeman?
So I have multiple questions for you, Brent.
Yeah,
Oh.
let's take it off the table. And so anyhow, we have a motion and a second to take it off the table. All those in favor will signify by saying aye, and those nay when the clerk calls the roll, please.
Brereton,
Aye.
Flurry,
Aye.
Frank,
Aye.
Freeman,
Aye.
McGee,
Aye.
Mulhall,
Aye.
Porter,
Aye.
Prather,
Aye.
Snow,
Aye.
Stevens,
Aye.
10 in favor.
Thank you. Okay, Alderwoman Freeman, floor is yours.
Thank you. So, can you tell me how much yearly revenue we're expected to get from this storm utility fee?
That will depend on what the final recommendation, what the city council basically establishes as those costs. To back up a little bit, just let you know where we're at as far as council action. The original motion was $37,190. Discussion at our last meeting was possibly going to get a further breakdown of that amount of money, which attached to my memo was information provided to us from Fairgram that broke those tasks down, individual tasks, and assigned costs to those tasks to make up the $37,190. So the answer to your question on what that charge will be, it'll be basically whatever the council decides is the amount they want to be able to establish on an annual revenue basis. There's ongoing costs that we do through the budgetary process now that we assign to stormwater management and oversight. Basically, there's $30,000 in the street department line item that we use for storm sewer maintenance. There's MS4 requirements, that inspection requirements that we have to do as well. So I think, just going off of my memory, there's probably about $45,000 of annual expense that we have regarding storm sewer work, storm sewer maintenance in the city of Belvedere currently. So what the biggest benefit for the stormwater utility over and above that would be to allow you to have a revenue stream that allows you then to have financing, an additional financing method of revenue bonds to go out to generate that revenue needed for storm sewer projects as the council would see a desire to have completed. I can tell you that, you know, you have loans, EPA loans, you have grants, you have your own revenues from existing revenue streams for funding of the storm sewer projects. As you know, the South Side stormwater study identified roughly at that point $42 million thereabouts of improvements that could be done on the south side. Did not address anything on the north side. I have some information that I can share with council about the lack of storm sewers on the north side, and the stormwater utility and the revenues generated from that utility would be able to be applied to installation of storm sewers where currently there are none on the north side. So there's effects to the north side as well. As far as the utility itself, I think if we look at those tasks, specifically 1, 2, 3, and 5, out of the identified tasks, at least if we get those done, I think council will have some feedback from the community and have some enough education about the subject that they can then decide if they want to continue down that path or decide that they don't want to. And certainly there's a number of, there's 8 tasks identified, and I think, again, if you do those first few and get to that point, we can reconvene, revisit the issue and see if council wants to still continue down, and we can do the stakeholder meetings at that point then if you want to get additional information before a final decision is made, or if you feel comfortable and have enough information, you can make that decision before we do that. But I think at least if you give the opportunity for the community to learn more about the program, what it means, what it is, then I think at least there's an education level there and a decision to be made based on that.
And if I might interject just a second, I know the last time this was up at the committee level, Alderman Brereton had brought up the point that he wanted these itemized, and I thought that was a good idea. I think it made sense before we decided that we're going to spend the $37,000. It has been pared down to the $13,900, and that's what the tasks 1, 2, 3, and 5 that have been identified are to be completed with that amount of money. So it's up to the council to decide how they want to move forward with it, if they choose to move forward with it to that next level. With that being said, Alderwoman Freeman, did you have anything else?
Yes, thank you.
You have the floor.
So this money, the stormwater utility fee, cannot be put into the general fund. It can't go for roads like the utility tax was supposed to go for roads and then went in the general fund. We all know that story, right? So this is only for stormwater usage or curbs and gutters, right? So, you know, I think that we need a breakdown of how we're going to split it up. Are we going to do 75% to the south side problem, 25% to curbs and gutters on the north side? We have to figure out a way to sell this to the north side and the residents in wards 1 and 5 who don't have a flooding issue, because not everybody in our wards do. So we need to kind of like break it down to them, like what's in it for them.
Well, and I think that's why I think if we do these initial steps, I think that's part of the education process for the community, is to show them that everybody is affected by storm drainage and storm water. whether it's storm drain pipes, it's curb and gutter, it's urban improvements, or it's flooding. Not everybody's affected by flooding, and this isn't strictly a flooding issue. This is a storm sewer issue. So there's storm sewer facilities all over town, and eventually the entire town will have storm sewer facilities, and this is a way to fund these. And unfortunately, like everything else, the dollar, today does not go as far as the dollar used to. So it used to be that it was just incorporated as part of a general fund budget. But because the expenses have gotten to the point, there's been several, I think we're up to about 35 or 36 some municipalities in Illinois that have gone through to establish the stormwater utility as a additional revenue stream and a funding mechanism for storm sewer improvements. Not necessarily flooding improvements, but storm sewer improvements.
Thank you. Lastly, so do you think we could do our own in-house marketing scheme by printing up flyers, informational, letting people know what this money can and can't be used for, how it's going to positively affect their lives, and then maybe at the bottom, a little survey. I would like this on a referendum. I would like this to be passed. I am 100% against this, and maybe a little comment section that could be put in with their water and sewer bill for them to learn about, maybe fill out the survey and return it, so we could get kind of a community feel of, there's 80% of the people dead set against this, or there's 80% of the people that are okay with this, or somewhere in between, so we even know if we have to do this fairground marketing thing.
Well, I would like to be able to say, yes, we could do this in-house, but unfortunately, with staffing levels that we have, basically myself and the public works superintendent that would be tasked to do that job, we just don't have the time to do it. So that's why we've gone out for the outside proposal to be able to do that part of the project for us.
Anything else? Okay, thank you, Alderwoman Freeman. Alderman Snow.
So in task 2, number 2, the public outreach, I see it talks about having the meeting at the community building on a weekday evening and running for 2 hours. Is 2 hours really enough? Or, because it seems like if you ran it from 5 to 7, you're going to still lose some people, just tossing that out there.
Right, and that's subject to fluctuation too. We can dial it up as we think we need to. It might be run from 4 to 7 or 5 to 8, or we can fine tune the time, the scope. It's basically we'll do basically same thing we did when we were doing street improvement projects, and we have the open house to let everybody know. It's going to be the same general format where we'll have stations or have information there available with a bunch of representatives available for discussion, so that we can have some one-on-one. There might be some general orientation maybe at the beginning, but basically it's a walk-in continuous information and with people available there to answer questions.
Alderman Fleury.
So you said at this point there's approximately 35 other municipalities that have implemented the storm water utility. Out of those, how many have Fairgram kind of been part of this process to bring it to the public and let them know what the information is?
I think Fairgram, probably not as much as Woods, the sub-consultant for Fairgram. They've done several of these, which is why they partnered up with Woods. I think Fairgram, probably worked on the city of Freeport, if I'm not mistaken, because Freeport does have a stormwater utility.
Right. So, I think at this point, it sounds like obviously there's 8 tasks and we're at task 2, right? So I know before it did seem like a lot, 37,000 to have outreach to the public, and I think that maybe that could happen, but I like how you've been able to pare it down so that we can do kind of the bare minimum to get the information out to the public and then see what it is. Obviously the 10 of us in here have had ample discussion and different opinions, and you've shared the pros and cons to it. So I think it is important to get it to the public, although there is a cost here. I think it's a reduced cost now to get it out to the public to see kind of what they actually feel about this, and then to give the information. Because if you just say there's going to be another utility, of course nobody wants to pay more for utility. But if you can educate why this is important, then maybe people that were against it might be forward and then give us a better idea of whether or not, what our constituents want in order to go forward with it, or say, if 90% of the town after being educated says, no, this is not the way we want to go, then, that makes it easier for us to see how we can best represent our community.
Right, and then we can also, as part of that orientation process, education process, like you said, the final rate or the final revenue number has not been set. There's recommendations, and you can see, what all the other utilities charge, whether it's, and most of them use the ERU, equivalent residential unit, and that, we can save that discussion for another time, but it ranges anywhere, I think, from $2 to 20-some dollars per ERU. So your bill on an annual basis could be $50, $100 to whatever that maximum number is. And I think if you put that kind of range out there as a part of that education process, then you can get a feel or impact of what the community may be willing to support as well. But again, because they've got those 8 items itemized, my recommendation is to approve the 4 at this point. And again, when you get that information back, then you can decide if you want more information, go through more of that public education, perhaps have that stakeholder meeting to see what kind of input they may provide you, or you may see after this initial response that it's like, no, I don't think we need to do this at this time. And that's entirely what the city council can, it's up to you guys on how you want to move forward. But I guess to put a little bit in perspective, according to Mr. Driller, we were looking up our general obligation bond capacity of the city of Belvedere, and if you maxed us out on a general obligation bond for the city based on our ERV, correct? Is that what's based on?
Well, the non-home rule bonding is a percentage, I think it's 8.25% or something like that of EAV.
Right.
So as a non-home rule unit, our maximum bonding authority would be somewhere around $29 million for a GO bond. We're non-home, we are home rule, so we can bond more if we want to, but obviously you don't want to like the state of Illinois.
Right. So, it's an eye-opener when you're talking $40 million of improvements, and not to mention all the other things, improvements and projects that we have going around the city as well, and what our GO capability is. Unlike, water and sewer, we are able to do revenue bonds to pay for those EPA loan programs and those other programs and expenditures that we have for both water and sewer, and the stormwater utility would act in that same very fashion.
Alderman Fleury.
Right. So I think obviously most of us are probably hesitant to want to have any more utilities, any more taxes put on, the citizens here. But in regards to, Fairgram on this, the campaign as they've broken it down into 8 tasks, and then, even this task 2 is broken into 7 more tasks. Has there been a track record of, municipalities that were hesitant, but then once the education program was rolled out, then, communities embraced it, or is there any kind of data about that?
Well, I'll have to check in to see how those went. My feeling would be, initial reaction would be that most of the municipalities involved have issues that need to be addressed, and this was their best way to fund those issues.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Frank.
Thank you. Brent, is there a 20-year commitment to this? Is that what I remembered?
No, not necessarily. Once you establish that utility, just like the water and sewer utilities, they'll be subject to rate increases depending on the situation. Conceivably, could you have a rate decrease? You may, but I would not foresee that happening. Only in the event that if you wanted to have a rate high enough to be able to finance a major project, and then once that financing for that major project is completed, then you could reduce the rate once again. But all those annual tasks that we do, inspection stuff, are probably only going to get higher, and there may be more of them depending on what EPA, public health, and the different agencies come down with as far as regulations go.
So is it
we are
safe?
doing more and more inspections on an annual basis now than we used to.
Is it safe to say that once we implement this, that it might never go away?
I would think that would be a safe assumption. Again, same as water and sewer. Once you have those things, they're there. Storm sewer, like I said, it may be up to a council to decide if they want to do that, where they could make the rate, you could still have the utility and just not charge anything for it conceivably.
Any other questions while we're on this topic?
So I guess my recommendation, again, according to the motion, would be that I would recommend the motion be amended to approve the table motion be amended to approve items number 1, 2, and 3, and 5 of Task 2 included in the proposal by Fairgram in the amount of $13,900. And this work will be paid for from line item 41.5.110.7900, of which we've had $100,000 in the budget.
Okay. That would be the motion. Before we get there, though, I see a couple other or Alderman Stevens has his hand up. I didn't want to miss you. Go ahead.
Maybe a little off track, but how is the 6th Street low flow coming? Are we on a schedule with that? And how's the one going down Fifth Avenue?
Okay, so the Fifth Avenue, the preliminary design of Fifth Avenue has been completed. So I will share, I didn't have that information in time for tonight's meeting, so I will share that information with council at the next committee meeting. Likewise, the low flow channel on 6th Street, we did meet with the property owner this past week, and he indicated he was in favor of creating a wet channel. Basically, the design would be a smaller version of the mill race in Belvedere Park, if you will. So there'll be more details on that coming up, coming forward to a committee soon as far as that goes too.
Okay. We have then, just to be clear, a motion to amend the approved items number 1, 2, 3, and 5 of Task 2 on the addendum included in the proposal by Fairgram in the amount of $13,900. This work will be paid for from the line item number 41-5-110-7900. We have a motion to that effect. Do we have a second? Second by Alderman Fleury. Any other discussion? I guess the way I look at this is it's the most reasonable, and as I'd said before, Alderman Byrd and had made the case that rather than, I guess, put both feet in the water, this might be an example of putting a toe in the water for a lot less investment and hopefully enough information that we could decide where they want us to go. So certainly, Alderman Burden.
Thanks, Mayor. Didn't mean to interrupt there.
Not at all.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, as you kind of alluded to, I'm not 100% sold on this utility, and I'd much rather see this informative piece be done in-house. So I feel kind of pigeonholed here, like this is our only choice, like, to move forward, because I don't want to put any more money into this if we're not going to go ahead with it. But we kind of can't see that future right now. So I don't know. I just expressed that I feel pigeonholed into doing this, I guess.
And I appreciate that. I think that's that's understandable to me. That's it depends on where you want to go. You want to invest to get more information regarding this. Everybody has one vote. Everybody will have a vote. Everybody will have a say, and majority rules. So I don't want anybody to feel that they're being obligated or pushed in a direction, because that's certainly not it. It's just the business at hand. So with that being said, if there are any other comments, everybody will have a chance to be heard with their vote. Alderwoman Prather.
Brent, it says here that our current budget includes $100,000 for the implementation of the stormwater utility. How much of the $100,000 have we actually spent at this point?
Out of the 100,000, we haven't spent anything yet because we're still working on the beginning of the implementation, which would be the 13.9 that we're talking about. Originally, it was going to be the 37,190, and now it's down to the 13.9.
So just for clarification, we're looking to spend 13.9 just for the public outreach portion at this point, just to see where we're going from here.
Well, to give the council, I guess, the initial reaction and input from the community on the question. Certainly, if council votes this down and doesn't want to proceed any further, then we can just put it on the shelf until such time as we can bring it back at some time point in the future if this council sees fit. But I think if you want to move forward, and I think before, again, having that education process, at least put it out there more so to the community, then you can gauge their reaction and respond accordingly.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Freeman and Alderman Fleury.
Thank you. So bottom line here is, we have a huge issue, and we need money to fix it. So we can, I think what it comes down to is we can either just go ahead and implement this like we have the gas tax and raise the sales tax and other things without community input and just suffer the backlash, or we can ask if they would like it to be put on a referendum and try to educate them as to how it will benefit them. And that's basically our two choices here, because and if the referendum fails, then we're pretty much screwed, because we have to have the money. It has to come from somewhere. It's not getting any better. It's only getting worse. So, you know, I'm torn between just doing it, or, you know, I don't know. That's where I'm at.
Thank you, Alderwoman Freeman. Alderman Fleury.
Thank you. So I think you'd mentioned this before, but so obviously right now we are incurring costs for any kind of stormwater projects. Where is that money coming from out of the budget?
So it's coming out of our capital improvement projects, capital improvement funds, is where the preliminary design work for the Fifth Avenue Storm Sewer Project, which is also includes the Fifth Avenue reconstruction and the 2 blocks of Allen Street reconstruction. So that is being paid for out of your capital improvement funds, which are being funded by the additional sales taxes and also your local gas tax, as well as utility tax funds, and basically those are your 3 main revenue sources right now for capital improvements. And what those can fund are probably, if you're trying to do in-house, I think the revenues generated from those are like $1 or $2 million annually. So if you were to take all of that money and put that towards those public works or the stormwater issue projects, that would get you there eventually. But again, you have other departments, fire department, police department, other things in the public works department, street projects, other things that are going over and above just your storm sewer issues. So again, I think that's why the whole issue was brought forward initially, was that it provided another option for funding.
Right. Okay. Well, at this point, I think that, although there is still a $13,000 investment and that could be used elsewhere, I think that at this point it seems to make sense to take that weaned down version just to get it forward, to have folks that can come in and talk about it, to educate the public and get that information out there, and then see, what is the kind of the feel of the public in a grander scheme. And, obviously we'd love to do it in-house, but, Brent already said that that's not feasible because we don't have the manpower. I can understand when you're saying we feel pigeonholed with it, but I think at this point, I think it'd be a good investment at least to do a preliminary kind of education to see if that's going to be worthwhile, and if we go any further. And then obviously there's still 6 tasks after this if we want to continue, but I think that small investment, I appreciate Brent too, just going in and kind of weaning it down to the cheapest point possible to still be able to accomplish some of that task of educating the public. So I think, at this point, I think that'd be a good investment for us.
Anybody else want to weigh in? Any questions? Anything we missed? Alderman Burden?
Thanks again, Mayor. Question for Brent. Director Anderson, any idea if we did implement the utility, you have any idea how soon residents that are affected would see relief?
Would see relief. My initial response would be, you probably wouldn't see, the relief would be in the amount that is basically, I guess, decided upon by council. So you could decide, you're basically going to set that initial impact, and you could decide to generate X amount of dollars, and it might cost the average homeowner, if it's $100 a year or $500 a year or $50 a year, whatever that cost, that's going to be the council decision. At least that's a revenue source. And then as you go forward, now you could play it out where you may charge, let's pick $2 ERU, and that means it'd be cost you $100 a year for the typical family, and that generates you X amount of dollars. And now you decide that you have a project that's a $8 million project to complete, and if that's the next step, and we can't break it down, we can't pare it down, we got to get this done. Then you can say, okay, we're gonna, council can vote to increase the cost to whatever that is to be able to fund the loan payment, if you will, to go out to do that. And then after that project specific is done, then you could always vote to reduce it. That typically doesn't happen that way, but conceivably it could happen that way. So I think, in answer to your question, it's what the council is going to ultimately decide. If they go that route to decide to establish utility, and what that rate is, that's basically going to be that initial impact will be what council decides.
Understood. Thank you.
Alderman Snow?
To piggyback on that question, so in theory, this is easily a 6-month projected project to implement the tax and potentially. And once you have that in place, then do we have any quasi shovel-ready projects that we could immediately jump on, get a bond, and move forward to allow some relief in certain areas?
Well, case in point would be the Fifth Avenue Storm Sewer project. We've just done the preliminary design engineering on that project. Right now, I think the estimated price tag is $4.8 million. And I don't think you have $4.8 million sitting there available to use for that project at this point in time. So that is a project that will have to be funded in some way, shape, or form. Not sure where that's going to come from. So certainly the stormwater utility would, that project would be an immediate benefactor of that additional funding.
So conceivably within a year from now or thereabouts, we could have significant earth and stuff being moved and work being done to do relief if this moves forward in a reasonable manner. Yeah,
if going through this process, the implementation was the consideration in the planning process was you probably wouldn't see anything till, especially where we're at now. My guess would be you'd be looking at May 1 the next fiscal year probably before this would actually be implemented, if council decided they wanted to actually go through and do it, where you're actually getting the revenue and going through that generation process. Because there's a lot of steps involved in getting that to that point, getting it done, figuring how we're going to bill it, figuring out if we're going to bill it as part of the water system, or if it's going to be a separate bill, and figuring out those logistics and how that is. Because there's not every property owner gets a water bill, and so we have to work out all those details and part in that implementation. So it's a pretty significant work effort to get everything established to that point that we can actually start charging. So I would say at the earliest you're looking at the beginning of the next fiscal year.
Alderman Porter.
Just one question. Are we working on any grants that might help? Is there anything in the works that might help with this problem? I know we lost a big one for not too long ago with Marengo getting a large grant for this similar problem. So I'm just wondering if we have anything in the works.
Well, we didn't lose anything to Marengo. Marengo's grant was for a wastewater treatment plant, not for a stormwater. So there's no, the low-interest loan program that we've utilized so far has been for sanitary sewer projects. But yes, we are always looking for grants opportunities. We have one now we're working on for the COVID relief funds. The city's getting 3.9, and I've already put my hand out for to the mayor to get first in line for those funds. So the plan would be to hopefully be able to utilize some of those funds for our storm sewer and or street projects, public works projects in general. We were able to get grant funds to help offset the cost for both the Bellwood ponds and the high school ponds to get those projects done, which they're just about finished. And we got punch list items to finish those to get that done. So yes, we are always constantly looking for grant opportunities for our storm sewer projects.
And I'm glad you brought that up, Brent. The improvements that we made up at the pond up by the high school, up by BHS, and then also down on, is it Bellwood or Highland? Bellwood. So we had a significant rain here recently where it seems like that flow runs from the south side of town and goes west and goes north. And that's just the lay of the land or the flow of the water. And I was curious, what have we seen? I know I think we had 6 inches of rain in a short period of time. And it wasn't the most rain I've seen us get, but it was a significant amount of rain. And did we see any impact of the improvements that we've made already?
We did. Fortunately, below the high school there, the Bellwood area, the water got up to about curb height. So there's about 6 inches of water in the street. It was a lot better than being above the sidewalks that have happened in the past. And the high school pond had more water in it from that storm event than at any time that I'd seen previously. So it looked like a full pond all the way up around the rim, close to the top. So I think it did what it was intended to do, and I think it helped alleviate that initial impact and effects of those intense rainstorms. So again, every little step we make helps in the overall process. And we've put these projects together as far as on the stormwater management, as outlined from Baxter and Woodman, to get our biggest bang for the buck, if you will. So to have the biggest impact on the system for as little cost as we can do it. And that's kind of how we've prioritized those projects. So the Fifth Avenue project being the next one in that line.
Thank you. All right, anything else? All right, hearing nothing else, then we have a motion and a second on the floor to approve item 1, 2, 3, and 5 of task 2, included in the proposal for Fair Graham in the amount of $13,900. The work to be paid for from line item number 41-5-110-7900. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Let's have a roll call vote, please.
Flurry,
Aye.
Frank,
Nay.
Freeman,
Aye.
McGee,
Nay.
Mulhall,
Aye.
Porter,
Nay.
Prather,
Aye.
Snow,
Aye.
Stevens,
Aye.
Brereton,
Aye.
7 in favor.
Okay. Thank you. Motion passed.
Mr. Mayor, that was actually a motion to amend.
Oh, that's right, it was. Okay.
This was stated several times. Okay.
So we need a We knew what we were voting on, we knew what the motion was. Second? Okay. All right. Moving to item 2, Public Works new business. Public Works update, Brent?
A few things not on the agenda. Our MFT overlay project has begun and is scheduled to be completed by this Friday. Our fall branch pickup will be scheduled for the month of October. That information will be published soon and posted up on our website as well. On the sanitary sewer side of things, the pilot hole for the Appleton Force Main project was completed today, and the contractor hopes to have the reaming portion of the project done by the end of this week. And hopefully, he said he'd be pulling the actual pipe back through the borehole by this Friday, actually, is what his anticipated timeline is. So the project is moving along. It's probably going to end up costing us a little bit more than the original contract amount, but that's still yet to be determined. The water side, the Water Department has received the Community Water Fluoridation 2020 Compliance Award from the Illinois Department of Public Health. So we are in receipt of that, and that's all I got for an update. If anybody has any questions on anything else.
Any questions for Brent? Okay. Item B, PFAS evaluation for well number 3 and number 4. Brent?
Memo in your packet, as well as some supporting documentation. As you know, we've discussed the fact that wells 3 and 4 have been found with PFAS. So attached to the memo is a proposal from Strand Associates to complete the evaluation, and it also includes the preliminary design for a new well number 11. Included in their proposal is an outline of the steps needed to apply for state revolving fund loan assistance for construction of a new well. I would recommend approval of the proposal from Strand Associates in the amount of $49,800 to complete the PFAS evaluation for wells 3 and 4 and the preliminary design for new well 11. This work will be paid for from the Water Department line item number 611780. So if you go back to flip through that second to last page, I believe it is. It gives you the outline and the scope of the preliminary opinion of probable costs and the associated engineering fees. Along with that, with the PFAS evaluation, there's the 49.8, and it also talks about the additional work that would need to be done if we pursue a new well 11. I would say probably I'm fairly confident well 3, just because of where its location, because of its age, and the other things that are associated with that well. That one will probably end up being capped. Well 4 may or may not fall in that realm. We may be able to do that. Again, that's what the evaluation will tell us, if it's economically feasible to utilize that well and make the necessary improvements we need to take care of the PFAS, or if we're better off just abandoning that well and putting in a new well 11. The new well 11 will have more capacity than both 3 and 4 currently have now. So that's the process that we're looking at. Again, to kick that off, I would recommend approval of the proposal from Strand.
Okay. Do we have a motion to that effect? Motion by Alderman Stevens. Do we have a second? Second by Alderman Snow. Any discussion? Alderman Snow, then Alderwoman Freeman.
Generically speaking, where would number 11 go?
It is going to go in the Farmington subdivision. They provided us a lot specifically for a new well as part of that subdivision process. So we have the property already.
Thank you. Alderwoman Freeman.
Thank you. So Brent, I take it 3 and 4 are offline right now anyway.
Correct.
And so 3 is 99% going to be capped. And is 4, if we do this PFAS testing and treatment, going to be able to handle it, or are we going to need an 11 anyway?
Well, eventually you're going to need 11 anyway, just as this growth in the city or whatever happens. we will need that 11. And 4, that's kind of why we're going through the evaluation process, is to determine treatment method, what it's going to take, what's the footprint going to be, what the cost is going to be based on the age and the efficiencies and what we have at well 4 again. That may prove to be doable, and it may not. And if it doesn't, then we need to jump right to the new well 11, just sooner than we had originally planned.
So could we just forego this and just jump right to that well anyway?
We could do that. Yes, we're going to need it eventually anyway, correct. What this does, however, is if you can do that and it's shown to be economical to do that, then you won't be having a $4 million bill and having to pay for that at this point in time. You just may have a somewhat less bill. So again, I think that's why you want to do the evaluation to see where you're at. If I had $4 million sitting in the bank ready to go, and I didn't have to go out and borrow the money to get the work done, then I would say, yeah, I wouldn't mess with, I would just abandon them, put the new well and move on. But we don't have that. We have to go out and borrow the money to do it. So in that case, I think it makes a little more sense to go ahead and do that evaluation.
Okay, thank you.
Alderwoman Frank.
Thank you, Mayor. Brent, well number 3 and well number 4 have PFAS, right? And you've been trying to get the levels down. But is there a reason that those 2 wells have that and no other wells in town have it?
Well, PFAS, we haven't been trying to get the levels down. All we know is that they are there and they're above the state established threshold of 2 parts per trillion. But we haven't, at this point in time, we haven't done anything to try to lower those levels. The evaluation process that we're talking about for tonight will actually go through and look at the different methods they have for PFAS removal and what those efficiencies are, what those expenses and costs are, and what the size of what plant improvements need to be made at each one of those sites in order to accomplish that. So that's what this work will do.
Well, I was Googling PFAS and why there would be like plastics in the water. And it was saying that with people using like water, laundry detergent that come in the, pre-packaged, they're in plastic. And the same way with dishwasher soap, when then they melt, is that like something that would be contributing to PFAS in the wells?
Well, PFAS is a manufactured substance, chemical, and it takes in a whole realm of chemicals that were used in just about anything and everything. All products contain anything with a slippery, nonstick surface, basically, that had a PFAS constituent to it. So the fact that well number 3 is located right downtown, next to, that used to be in the old manufacturing area of Belvedere, is plausible. It's not surprising that we found PFAS there. Well number 4 being in this location of where it's at, again, because it's closer in proximity to the manufacturing areas of the old established Belvedere. Again, not too surprising. Fortunately, the rest of our wells are more out on the perimeter of town, and therefore has less of that activity associated with it. But yeah, PFAS is now that they've put controls to it, it's not in near as much stuff as it used to be, but it was pretty prevalent for a long time.
Okay, anybody? And it might be important to note that even if we would give up on these wells 3 and 4, which it sounds like 3 may be a lost cause, but that if we sink a new well, number 11, there's no guarantee that we won't have a PFAS problem with the new well, right?
Correct. And basically, the treatment method, again, that would be planned for and allowed when the design for the new well 11 will take that into account, even if we don't find it in the initial drilling and the sampling and it doesn't show up, we will still incorporate the design for what needs to be done to treat PFAS as part of that design, so that if at some point in the future it does shows up in the sampling and stuff, then we'll be able to have, we know we have the ready-made capabilities to do it after we make those improvements, but at least allow for that space-wise.
All right. Any other questions or comments for Brent? All right, then, hearing none, we have a motion and a second on the floor for the approval of the proposal from Strand Associates in the amount of $49,800 to complete the PFAS evaluation for wells number 3 and 4 in the preliminary design for new well number 11. This work will be paid for by the Water Department line item number 61-1780. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Motion passed. And item C, Brent, the wastewater treatment plant dewatering centrifuge upgrade with your memo here.
Yes, memo in the packet, as well as some supporting documentation. The dewatering centrifuge at the wastewater treatment plant was installed in 2005. It needs to be updated in August of 2020, a year ago, just about to the day. Council approved factory updates at the then estimated cost of $34,250. Due to the effects of the pandemic, this work has been delayed, and during the delay, Centrisa's notified us that the cost estimate was in error. The original estimate was based on a smaller centrifuge, and the sales manager that prepared the estimate for us was no longer an employee of the company. So the revised cost estimate from Centrisa's is attached, and the cost of the updates ranges from $36,000 to $80,500, depending on what they find when the unit is disassembled. Based on the amount of usage over the 15-year period, the cost will probably be on the higher side. The cost to update the control panel is $10,750. Therefore, I would recommend approval of the proposal from Centrisa's for factory updates to the the dewatering centrifuge at the wastewater treatment plant at a cost not to exceed $91,225. This work will be paid for from the sewer depreciation account. Due to this unforeseen additional cost, the planned replacement of a pickup truck for the wastewater treatment plant, which is budgeted at $40,000, may be delayed for 1 year. A motion to waive the bidding process will be required as the cost for the updates exceeds $20,000. Again, once we won't know the exact cost for the updates until they get the unit will be removed. That will be taken back to the factory, which is in, I think, Kenosha or Sheboygan, north of Milwaukee, and then broken down, disassembled, and they'll go through it, and basically they're going to make the necessary repairs. We'll have a like new unit when it comes back. And I said, well, what's the expectation as far as life expectancy for these? And he said, once we get it back, it'll be to factory original tolerances, so you could expect another 15 years of life out of it. So it's basically, it is cheaper than buying a new one, and we should get about the same amount of life. So I think it's still, even though there's more costs involved than what we were originally led to believe, I think it's going to be a worthwhile investment. So again, we would need the two motions. A motion to waive the bidding process if council proceeds with the repairs.
All right, with that being said, do we have a motion on the floor then as requested in the memo? Motion by Alderman Sos, second by Alderman Stevens. Any discussion regarding that?
And I can add too, as far as the truck, putting that off for the year, it'll of course depend on what that total cost is. If the cost comes back closer to the 36,000 number, then maybe we can still afford to do the truck. But if it's to the 80,000, then we definitely won't do the truck until next year.
Okay. Alderwoman Freeman?
Thank you, Your Honor. So Brent, I think just recently we took a lot of money out of the depreciation account. So do we have this much money left in here, and where is that going to leave us in that account?
We have the money in the account to do that work at this time. The next big project, our current project, the 2018 project, all of that cost for that work is EPA loan eligible. So that'll be all rolled into that. There's money in there to do what we have currently budgeted. When we come up to do the next, probably the primary clarifier project is gonna be next, just based on need for that equipment. That's estimated to be, I think, $1.4 million. So then we might have to look at loan or other financing methods. Again, maybe that part of that 3.9 that was coming to us from the pandemic relief would be another suitable use for that money, in my opinion. So yes, we have funds available to cover this cost at this point in time. But again, because of the amount of it, I can forego a truck purchase for a year. I can get another year of life out of our pickup truck in order to pay for this now.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Frank?
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Brent, when we did this bid, what was it, last year? Were there other bids that came close that we could go to, or do you want to stick with this bid?
This is a factory, this is all done through the factory, so there is not a bidding process. So that is why you need a motion to waive the bids in this instance, and why that was done a year ago also. This is strictly through the factory, so we purchased this direct from the factory, and the work is being done direct through the factory.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions for Brent? All right, hearing none then, we have a motion and a second for the proposal from Centrisis for factory updates to the wastewater treatment dewatering centrifuge upgrade at the wastewater treatment plant at a no cost to exceed $91,225. The work will be paid for from the sewer depreciation fund. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passed, thank you. And then do we have a motion to waive the bidding process since it would be required at the cost, as the cost of the updates exceed $20,000? Motion by Alderwoman Prather. We have a second. Second by Alderwoman Mohal. Any discussion regarding that? I think it was explained. That being said, no other discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed. Okay, thank you. And Brent, item D.
Memo in your packet is an attachment, intergovernmental agreement for path maintenance. Boone County and Boone County Conservation District were awarded $520,000 in TAP funds to construct the first phase of the proposed shared use path connection between the city of Belvedere and the village of Poplar Grove to the Long Prairie Trail, which has been identified in both the bicycle and pedestrian plan for the Rockford metropolitan area, as well as the Greenways, a green infrastructure plan for Boone and Winnebago County. The path will connect to the city sidewalk extension located in Lawrenceville Road and Poplar Grove Road intersection improvement project. And it says see an attached map, so if you look at the very last page of the attachment, there's a colorized map there, in the section that involves the city would be that red portion in red. IDOT is administering the TAP funds and is requiring a formal maintenance agreement for this project. Attached to the memo is the proposed maintenance agreement. The city's responsibility will be for that portion of the sidewalk in the right-of-way located within the city limits. I would recommend approval of the intergovernmental agreement among Boone County, Illinois, the city of Belvedere, Illinois, and Boone County Conservation District for the maintenance of the South Piscataquis Creek connection path, and authorize the mayor to sign the agreement.
Okay, do we have a motion to that effect? Motion by Alderman Snow, second by Alderman Porter. Any other discussion regarding that? Yes, Alderman Snow.
So Brent, do we have any idea how much the bicycle or the sidewalk proposed that's in red is gonna cost us, and when would that be completed, and logistics there?
It was included as a part of the intersection by reference with a separate funding. The separate funding would be this TAP project because it's an 80-20, so the feds pay 80 and the local pays 20. So I have got to get that number from the county because it's a county-led project. So once I get that breakdown, I'll know what it is. But again, we have budgeted monies for the intersection, and we received 2 grants of $100,000 to offset some of those costs. So we are still going to be under budget after the installation of this sidewalk. I think they're looking at the work beginning in the spring.
Alderwoman Freeman?
Thank you. So Brent, is this path, I've been on bike paths and most of them are, asphalt or blacktop. Is this gonna be a concrete like sidewalk thing, or is it gonna be like a blacktop that will need sealed and, resurfaced?
So the portion in red, that's our portion, will be sidewalk. It's gonna be a sidewalk basically to the end of the right of way, and then, it'll be sidewalk down to the intersection, and then as part of the intersection improvement project, the path is already marked out and stuff on the pavement and everything. So from that point on, it'll be asphalt, but that will be not our responsibility.
Okay, so then what are we gonna just have to shovel it in the wintertime? That's about what we need to do?
Well, we probably won't even do that, but if we have to, we have to. But no, the state, and we're not sure why, but they just made this requirement, so we're trying to satisfy that requirement. So it won't be we won't treat it any different than any of our other right-of-way. It's just written in the agreement.
Thank you.
Alderman Burden?
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I mistakenly was under the impression that this wasn't going to cost us anything other than maintaining that portion of sidewalk. Do we know how much concrete are we talking and how much the cost is going to be of this?
I got to get that from the county. I don't have that breakdown available to us, but I know that, again, we've got money left in what we have budgeted for the Lawrenceville, for this intersection improvement project, and this section of sidewalk was included in part of that project. So even after we pay that bill, again, we're still going to be under budget. But I don't have that specific number, but I can get that for you, yes. And I will, once I know that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Alderman Burden?
I guess I'm just a little perplexed on this. So the grant was awarded to Boone County and the Boone County Conservation District. I know it might seem minimal, but I don't understand why we're contributing to this.
Okay, so when we did the intersection improvement project for Poplar Grove Lawrenceville Road, that intersection improvement project included the path connections, it included the path, it included the sidewalk, it included other improvements, turning lanes, included other improvements to that intersection, of which this sidewalk installation was a part of that. But because they had applied for this TAP funds to pay for those path portion improvements, that was referenced to be paid for separately so that we could take advantage of the 80-20 split. Otherwise, we would have had to pay 100% of the cost of that sidewalk extension as part of that intersection improvement, less the grant funds that help offset it. So it was more advantageous for all three entities, including the township, the city, and the county, on the intersection improvement project, to have the TAP project pay for those certain improvements that could be eligible for TAP funds, aka the path and the sidewalk, as opposed to having it paid for out of the Lawrenceville, Poplar Grove as part of that intersection. So that's why it was done that way. This agreement that we're talking about tonight is strictly for the maintenance once everything is all done and in place, and that's only because of the use of the TAP funds. IDOT is requiring that maintenance agreement to be there.
Thank you.
And because we were listed as an entity, because basically you have to have a start and end point. So in order for everything to be connected, that work, that's why the city, that's why we're involved in it.
So basically, the sidewalk's gonna get done regardless what we vote tonight?
Well, the sidewalk was included with the Poplar Grove Lawrenceville Road, so technically council's already approved the sidewalk. The only thing that was talked about, that's discussed tonight, is basically the maintenance agreement for that.
Okay.
And Brent, so that we can put it into some perspective, the money that was awarded, the TAP funds, that was awarded, when you look at this project in its entirety, is there any way we can make a guesstimate as to what our portion?
I'll get you a number, I'll get you what our portion will be, hopefully before council meeting on Monday.
Okay, it should, I wouldn't imagine it would be it would not be that sizable, but.
Well, and I might have to go off the engineer's estimate, because I don't think it's actually been, I don't know if it's been bid yet or not. I know it's been talked about, I know it's been done in the spring, but I don't know. I'd have to check with Justin Crone from the county to see.
I understand we all keep asking you for something you can't give us right now. Okay. So we have a motion and a second then for the approval of this intergovernmental agreement among Boone County, Illinois, the City of Belvedere, Illinois, and Boone County Conservation District for the maintenance of the South Piscataquis Creek Connection Path, and authorize the mayor to sign the agreement. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed. Thank you. Thank you, Brent. Building, planning, zoning, unfinished business, item 3, we have none. 4, building, planning, zoning, and new business. Gina, item A, any update?
So what was supposed to be a pretty heavy plan commission agenda for tomorrow, lighting up the Genoa Road projects, have been postponed for another month. So city council won't be seeing that next week as anticipated. So that just means we will have cases in October. Getting more zoning verification letters. One of the trends that are kind of odd for the zoning verification letters, and kind of ties in with some of Kip's stuff, is typically for zoning verification letters, it's like duplexes or industrial uses, and the banks want to make sure that they are conforming with the city code, or if they're non-conforming, how do they rectify it? Because I want to make sure it's a good investment. Last month and this month for Belvedere and even for Poplar Grove, they never get letter requests, and they had one this month, is for vacant lots and subdivisions, where the banks want to make sure that they're platted legally and they're buildable, which means that there are people looking at buying the vacant lots wanting to build houses on them. So they want to make sure before they purchase that vacant lot, it's a good buy. So I would assume that means there would be housing permits for those lots selling in the foreseeable future. So that is, that's a good trend to have. Historic Preservation wanted to have a fundraiser in October. I just don't think it's going to happen. But they do plan on having one this winter at some point. Did have our kickoff meeting for Hometown Christmas, so one event to the next. We're hoping to bring it back to more traditional ways, but still keep part of that reverse parade in the park this year, because that was a pretty big hit last year. So we're going to see how we can combine them. There's a strolls in October. There was another strolls yesterday. It was very, very hot yesterday. Half my vendors didn't come, probably because of the heat. Casa had their car show. I think that went very well for them. And Region 1 had an electric vehicle event at the same time. So traffic was a little bit of a nightmare, but there's just a lot of people there, which is good for the downtown. I had another place to be, so since I couldn't clone myself, Sarah did help. So thank you very much for that, Sarah. She closed up the day for me. Poplar Grove has some minor cases, nothing too exciting. Census data, GIS department had to order software because the census data, to get it in the block and track level data, you had to have a specific software for it. So GIS department did order that software so that they can upload the data, and then we can see if anything needs to be redistricted in Belvedere and start getting some data out. Got contacted by the land bank the other day. There's one property out of the list of properties I gave them that they are going to pursue. So it looks like we could have another land bank purchase in Belvedere, which is good. Out of the 3 that they purchased last year, or acquired last year, I know 2 of them have already been flipped, and they're making renovations to those properties now. New porches, windows, and stuff like that, which obviously the neighbors greatly appreciate. So it's good to see that there'll be another one of those. A couple of the facade grant projects are getting completed, so that's actually pretty quick compared to last year's. And I sent out 2 letters for special uses that are expiring. One property owner told me he believes he's just going to let it expire. He has some other ideas for the property and whatnot. And the other one is for the solar farm, kind of going on what Mike Dunn was talking about. The solar project in the conservation district, there's been some staffing changes, so I'm trying to get to the right person to see if they're still pursuing it. I know the conservation district is still up to it. There's a meeting in Poplar Grove tonight. There's 2 solar farms they approved have expired, so they're going before the board tonight for an extension request. The state just passed a new energy bill, and within it, there's more incentives for community solar projects. So, which is why Poplar Groves is jumping to get theirs renewed. And I'd imagine once I figure out the right point of contact for a MERSCO for the Conservation District one, that they will be coming back for an extension then to take advantage of that new energy bill. And then in the last 5 months, I tallied it up, I've handed out 22 applications for rezoning, special uses, variances. Out of those, I think 14 of them are high possibility of actually getting turned in. So even though there's some big cases, that are working on now, I would expect the winter and the spring to be just as busy based on the amount of applications I'm handing out to people.
Alderman Snow?
Gina, do we actually have census data telling us what our population actually tallied up to?
Yes, so it is, we did lose some. We lost a couple hundred. I think it was 0.8 or 0.9% of our population went down, which regionally was actually very good. Most municipalities within the region were at 9, 10, and even 13% decline. So we were under 1%. So we, that was pretty significant. So we're at 25,332 or something like that. So we are still home ruled.
And keep in mind, that's still unofficial. It's not official till Jesse White signs on the
But yeah,
dotted
that's
line.
the draft data they're sending out.
Yeah, I've seen 2 versions of that, and they've been within, 100 of one another, so hopefully that'll be somewhere around there will be the tally total. So, okay, any other questions for Alderwoman Frank?
Gina, it's about the car wash. I hear all these rumors he's not going to build after all. He's trying to find a new buyer. And then somebody said that the water underneath is contaminated. Can you just clear up the rumor? Is he going to build?
There is no contamination that staff is aware of. I do know at one point he was selling his business. And I've been monitoring the property deeds at the county to see if there was a land purchase in there, and talking to several people within that industry. The last I heard was that he did sell his actual physical businesses in McChesney Park and I believe Rockford, but not his vacant land properties. I know code enforcement did go after him when he was not returning our calls and emails. He did respond to his violation tickets. Imagine that. And at that point, he did say that he had every intention of trying to build by this fall. I did talk to his engineer last week, and his engineer has not had any contact with him. So I do not know if, like I said, I know that the actual buildings that he had were sold, but the Belvedere location was not part of that sales package, is what I was able to find out. But yeah, last communication we had was that he said he was going to build in this fall, but we are still waiting to hear from him. But yeah, there is nothing to do with contamination, though. That is just a rumor.
I just have people ask me every single week about that, whether it's going to happen.
All right, Alderman Snow.
Any idea or any scoop, or is there anything on Grandma's Restaurant and, was it, Beefaroo?
I believe the property ended up being too small for Beefaroo, for what the size building they wanted to have and the parking they wanted, it was just, too small. I do know that there's other interested buyers though, and that they were working with other interested buyers. That is the last communication I had with their attorney.
Also, Gino, was there any interest from Beefaroo for perhaps another location? Any of that?
So me and Pam tag teamed. So for the Genoa Road truck stop, as you've seen, phase 2 would involve 2 new restaurants. I contacted the developers and told them Beefaroo was interested in locating in Belvedere. I think that interchange location would be fantastic, and it has the acreage they need, and gave them Beefaroo's contact. Pam then went to Beefaroo and said, hey, we know this developer that's looking for restaurants. That way, hoping in one direction it would follow through. And we both got, great, thanks for the information. We'll get a hold of them. But neither one of us have gotten an update since then.
Okay. Any other questions for Gina on the update? All right, item B, zoning code amendment on flags. Gina?
Okay, so back in May, there were several text amendments that staff proposed. One of them was to the flag code, which is the sections of the staff report and minutes from that plan commission meetings are in front of you. It was to alter the flag code. Instead of saying that residential zones are limited to 1 pole with up to 3 flags, we said that all zoning districts can have, okay, let me backtrack, I'm sorry. The code originally stated that in residential areas, you could have 1 pole with 3 flags. All other, so rural holding, which is our ag district, commercial industrial, they could have 3 poles with 3 flags. We just wanted to make it the same across the board. Everyone could have 3 poles with up to 3 flags per pole, which would give you a total of 9 flags per lot. This went back and forth a lot, and Plan Commission concerns with what kind of flags, would it be too much flag on a small lot, would it be gaudy, this and that. When it came to council, I believe it went back to committee of the whole several times. And ultimately it was changed. So now the discussion is, should it go back to what staff was originally proposing, or to be even more lenient, I guess, with the number of flags. I'm not sure who brought this onto the agenda, but that is the quick history of it.
So subsequent to the original code, which allowed 1 flagpole, 3 flags, we did amend the code. This council amended the code. Currently, you're allowed, I believe it's up to 3 flagpoles, but not more than 3 flags per lot.
It is, I believe, and I got all the history stuff, but not what was finally approved, but I believe it was up to 3 flags. That could be 1 pole per 3 flags, or 3 poles with 1 flag each.
Right.
So, but still ultimately, you can't have more than 3 flags.
And what we have run into, and frankly, the mayor's gotten dragged into this as well, unfortunately, is that there are a lot of properties out there that have had 3 flagpoles for a long time, and we're flying 3 flags. And it's real hard to come up with a good reason why it was okay to have 3 flags on 3 flagpoles in every single zoning district in the city, with exception of residential, and also now we're not allowing that. So the mayor, when faced with this problem with existing users that had been going forward under the previous zoning code, asked that we put it back on the agenda because it really just didn't make, to the administration's point of view, a lot of sense to limit the number of flags on each flagpole. If you can put 3 on 1 flagpole right now, or you could put 2 on one and 1 on another one, or 1 on 3 flagpoles, or if you have 1 flagpole, you can put 3 flags on it. What's the difference between 3 flags and 3 flagpoles? So that's the discussion that we want to have this evening, is because we have several properties that have been doing that for a very long time, which is why we want to bring it back in the first place, and why staff's original recommendation was to do exactly that. Because frankly, it was existing anyway. So that's the discussion we want to have this evening, is to consider going back to the proposal that came out of the planning department last spring, I believe it was, to allow 3 poles with up to 3 flags per pole throughout the city.
Also, some of the properties that have that existing, I will say that I've went by the property. I think they're they're neat. I don't see any issues with them. I don't see whether or not they have 1 flag on 3 poles or 3 flags on each pole. I don't see that that's necessarily an issue to me. But I think we would be better served to be consistent. So if there's some other reason that we don't want to do that, I hated to reintroduce this, but I think down the road, we're going to have it anyhow, so we'll have that discussion. So Alderman Snow and then Alderwoman Frank.
Is there any possibility, or can you do this, we're having the 3 max, and then if somebody really wants to, they could move forward with a special use? Or would that not be a good idea? I'm just throwing something out there.
Special uses should really be for land uses, kind of business, kind of operation, something that has a footprint. Flags are not really a land use, so it's hard, especially because you gotta look at the findings of fact, the LaSalle factors for a special use. Will it impede adjacent development? Will it put a strain on traffic? Will it negatively impact the public safety and general welfare? Those factors would be very hard to come out negative for a flag. You know, it's not gonna impact water and sewer. It's not gonna impede development. They're temporary uses, not permanent ones.
Murals, we control murals.
So murals is.
Let's not go there.
Yeah. Let's just say murals is a very complicated issue.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure we,
No, I understand. We can go there if you want, but I think they're different. I think this is the discussion in front of us is specific to the flag question. I don't think that we got it right with this last try that we had, but I think that's exactly why I put it back on here. So I'm the culprit, Gina. I'm the guy. So I know. Well,
I'll throw him under the bus.
Thank you. I felt guilty. So, all right. So here we are.
And I hate even bringing this up, but when you're talking about flags, you're talking about the First Amendment. And one of the issues you run into with the First Amendment, especially under the I hate to say current, but the current string of cases that are coming out of the Supreme Court interpreting the First Amendment, giving it much more weight and much less ability of government to control speech. We talked about that with the begging ordinance, for example. If you're going to control the flags and the number of flags, you have to have a real good reason to do it, and the method to do it has to be the least restrictive method of obtaining that goal. Now, obviously, aesthetics is one reason. Is it super important? I don't know. That's something we'd have to have a discussion about. But it's awful hard to say that you can, in the past, 3 flags and 3 poles were fine in everything but the residential district, and turn around and say, okay, now you can't do it, when it was perfectly okay before. That would have a hard time standing up to a First Amendment challenge. So that's something to keep in mind is we may or may not like having 3 flagpoles next to our house, but can we identify a good reason for not allowing that?
Anything, Alderwoman Frank, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to say I'm happy that you're reintroducing it because I have a gentleman in my ward that's had them, and he doesn't understand why you're changing it. But I also think if it's a homeowners association and they have those kind of limitations, then that's a different story. But for us to tell them, I'm glad we're visiting this again.
And this will have no impact on homeowners association rules. Whatever they choose to enforce amongst their association is up to them.
Alderman Snow. Well,
So that's a good point. This will have to go to planning and zoning for a public hearing, like any other text amendment. I think what we'd look for here is direction from this committee as to whether you want staff to proceed with the text amendment. That could be a way of a straw vote. If there is that general support, it does not even need to go to council at this point. Madam Clerk, it would simply be a direction from this body to the staff to introduce a text amendment at planning and zoning, and then it would work its way back up here.
motion to that effect.
If you want, but you got a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Alderman Freeman?
Thank you. So I don't think I would want my neighbor to be flying 9 flags.
Well, okay. Anybody? Anybody? Anybody else? All I will say is that I have looked at a property that is going to definitely is going to fall under outside of this if we don't take a look at it, and it is a neat, clean property. It's landscaped better than anything I've got on my lot, and so I went by it. I didn't find it offensive. I didn't think there was anything wrong with that. I think they had been flying a Marine flag, they were flying a naval flag, they were flying an American flag, state of Illinois flag, Air Force flag. So, that's essentially,
I think it was.
yeah, I think they might have had one, yeah. So, anyhow, that's where we're at. So, I guess we could start out with a motion then to send this back to Building, Planning, and Zoning.
Planning and zoning.
Okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Motion by Alderman Snow, second by Alderwoman Frank. Any other discussion on it? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay. Motion passed.
And again, there's no real reason to take it to council at this point.
Correct. Okay. Thank you, Gina. Kip, building department update?
Thank you, Mayor. For last month, under property maintenance, we had 43 cases. Of those, 18 have been closed. We issued a total of 112 permits for a value of construction at $2,900,000, bringing in a revenue of $37,229 in permit fees. 96 were residential, 16 were commercial. We issued 12 single-family residence permits, and I have 8 on the table right now to review. Some commercial updates. We have a lot of tenant build-outs in the works in town. One involves the Rosati's location. One involves the old closed cash store by the donut shop. One involves Midland Bank, Family Video, and the old laundromat next to, I believe it's a Family Dollar, and the Murphy Oil. And I'll entertain any questions.
Alderwoman Frank?
Kip, can you tell us what's going into the old Midland Bank?
At this time, I'd rather not until it's under permit.
Okay, thanks.
It's an existing business in town. They're just expanding their location.
Good. Good point. Okay, any other questions for Kip? Kip, that's it? Anything else? Okay, thank you. Also, before we adjourn, we had the 9/11 remembrance down at the Fire Station 1. Had a good turnout. Alderman Stevens, Alderman Flurry, I'd seen down there. If I missed anybody, I apologize, but thank you guys for coming. Went real well. Nice turnout. Good cause. So with that, we have no other business. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Motion by Alderwoman Frank, second by Alderman Porter. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Let the record show we adjourned at 7:45. Thank you, everybody.